Today's episode is on a topic I'm very passionate about. My friends, today we will be talking about the gut and brain connection. This time last year, I lived in oblivion thinking that our gut was only useful for digesting food. But after listening to a podcast episode one day on the topic of gut health, my eyes opened wide and got me thinking about my own health issues I was experiencing at the time. I started to consider how crucially important my gut health was to my overall health. Did you know 70% of your immune system is in your gut? This means that a lot of other diseases, whether they be chronic or even cancer, could possibly have stemmed from an unhealthy gut microbiome. After doing some more research and realizing that even our mental health is impacted by the health of our gut, I knew this was something I needed to discuss on the show. Sylvia Hall is our guest today, and she is going to be sharing her story about gut-brain health. Sylvia is the founder and owner of Lifted Naturals, a $1 million company dedicated to helping people feel better naturally through probiotics. The line of probiotics are classified as mood boosting because not only do they help with digestion, but they are filled with bacteria strains that talk to your brain and help ease symptoms like anxiety and depression. Sylvia explains how, in some cases, anxiety and depression can be symptoms of an unhealthy gut. We talk about the signs of an unhealthy gut, the scientific reasoning behind the gut-brain connection, destigmatizing mental health, being your own advocate in the health space, and so much more. The point of today's show is not to say, take this magic pill and all of your problems will go away. Today's show is meant to open your eyes to the importance of a healthy gut and its domino effect on not only your mental health, but the health of the rest of your body. I know how impactful that podcast episode I heard last year was for my health, and I genuinely hope that this episode today has the same effect on you, my friend. You're listening to the Cultivating Curiosity podcast, where everyone has a story to share. This is the story of Sylvia Hall, founder of Lifted. All right, please state your name and what you do.
Oh, I am Sylvia Hall, and the way you said it was almost like I was under investigation. So
I'm investigating you, interrogating you.
My name is Sylvia Hall, and I help people feel better naturally.
I love that. Where did you grow up, Sylvia? Please paint a picture for me of your family life, your neighborhood you grew up in, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I grew up in a very small town in Northeast Missouri, and around 2,000 people. So for fun, we would cruise the streets in our car and go from one gas station to another end of town and back again. And I definitely had a strong feeling of wanting to leave that small town life, but also in the middle of that, knew that it was exactly what I needed in some way. So that led us to a bigger, but not quite huge town. So I went to college in Columbia, Missouri, and then now we live in Kansas City, Missouri. So a little bit of a stair step. And at first, Kansas City felt huge, like the biggest city. And now it's getting much smaller as I continue to meet people and run into people I know. And it's kind of almost become a new small town.
I love that. Did you meet your husband in Missouri?
So he and I both grew up in the same small town. And so we've been together for like 19 years now.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we're coming up on our anniversary. So we had been dating for 5 years and then got married when I was 20. So
wow.
It was kind of wild to be that young. And I was so nervous for the wedding, but actually just because I was like, everybody's looking at me. And I don't even like weddings. Mm-hmm. I'm one of those strange women that's like, could we just skip this? And so we had a really short outdoor wedding. But he and I have been in it for the long haul for quite a while now.
I love that. He's not only a partner in life, but a business partner too, which is awesome.
And I'll get into that more later, but it definitely start, love and then babies and then business.
So cool. That's awesome. Yeah. What kind of characteristics would you use to describe yourself as a child and growing up into a young adult?
So I have always been very highly sensitive, and I don't mean that my feelings got hurt easily. I mean that I would get car sick or I would get a headache if I had too much bright light. I would feel very nervous about just I would feel things deeply in my surroundings. And so that's actually been one of my biggest assets now as a product creator is that very sensitive nature. And then it's a little confusing for me as I look back because as a child, I was very shy until I wasn't. Like something just clicked and I came out of my shell and it was like, you were shy, but I used to hide like behind my mom, behind her leg. And then something happened and I came out of my shell and I'm definitely an extrovert and identify as an extrovert who loves being around people and connecting with people. So I don't know exactly what it was that brought me out of my shell, but one day it just clicked.
It's cool to see how we evolve and change as we get older. We truly become like a better version of ourselves and more true to ourselves. It's exciting to see and watch it unfold. So what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your big dream for life?
I always played work. So I would set up a library and I would be like, or like the bookstore owner, and I'd be like, hey, come get your books or come, check out your books from me. Or I would set up another kind of like market and I was always selling, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like to say I waltzed out of the womb an entrepreneur because the most exciting thing for me was to create something and then exchange it with another person. Mm-hmm. So even for a little bit when I thought maybe I wanted to be a lawyer, all I was doing was writing cases. And then I would like share the cases with people. And so as a small child, I loved to play work, which is really kind of interesting because as an adult now, like I love to work and the work I do is so satisfying and energizing that I have to make myself not work just to because that's what people say is good for you to do. Take a break.
What is that? What is resting and recharging?
Right. But even I'm really serious about my being a mom too. So I have an almost 9 and an 11-year-old, and I take that job very seriously too. But that kind of just goes right in line with the work thing. Like, okay, and now I show up as a really good mom, and so there's an intensity to my personality too, very ambitious and driven. And for instance, when I found out I was going to have our first child, it was a boy and I was elated. I didn't really have a preference. But shortly after I knew for sure I needed a daughter. Mm-hmm. I just knew that's what I wanted. I was like, I know I want another child. I know I want a girl. I mean, if I had another boy, of course, I would have loved him. It's not like some silly scenario like that, but I just had this strong knowing of wanting a girl. And so I read a book, How to Choose Sex of Your Baby, or I can't remember what it was called, but there were some strategies put into place. And I was like, that. And so that's kind of a really good picture to paint of how I approach life. Like, this is what I want. This is what I'm willing to do to get it. And then beyond that, if it doesn't happen, like there's this knowing that I gave it my all and I did what I thought I needed to do. And the rest is just fate and allowing for what is, meant to be.
I love that. Like you too have a very clear image in your mind of what you want and you go after it. It's so awesome. I mean, that's why you're so successful in your business, which we'll talk about later on. But before we get into that, I want to know a little bit more about what your plan was like after high school and going to college. Like you seem like a planner, so it seems like you had this very specific plan laid out. Did that work out for you?
So I went to college because that was kind of planted as that's what you do. I was going to high school in a small town. I was able to go through a program that allowed me to have my first 2 years of community college paid for.
Oh, that's nice.
And because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I was really sure I wanted to do some really cool things, that it was ideal. So the first 2 years were free. And then the next 2 years, I did an evening program, which was the same type of thing you get during the day, but just cheaper. And I've always been very practical, like, okay, like, well, I'll take that. I like the better deal of that. And I was able to work at a preschool as a teacher's assistant. I just love kids. I knew it wasn't an end goal. It was more of an enjoyment along the way. And so as I finished up the last couple of years, I did a lot of stuff with teacher's assistant at a preschool. And then when we moved to Kansas City, I was a kindergarten teacher assistant. And then I pitched to that school. I wanted to share a creative writing class with the middle schoolers. And so they took me up on that, and I was doing that. And then pretty shortly after that, I got pregnant with our first child. And I think the main thing in my head was I knew I wanted to have a family and I wanted to be home with them. And then beyond that, I knew that I wanted to be home with my babies, but I also wanted to make things and create things. And so it was the perfect kind of setup to mentally stimulate myself as I was fulfilling this very deep desire and knowing that I would be home with them and be a really good mom and also create along the side. So the very first business endeavor that I approached when I was pregnant with our first child was jewelry making. So I'll never forget, I made my first earring and I held it up to my husband. I was like, "Hey, I made an earring." And he was like, that's an, the face of like, that's an earring.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to be rude, but it really wasn't that good of an earring, right? But that is the ultimate lesson I've continued to teach myself and my children, is that if you draw a shark one time, it'll be meh. If you draw that same shark 100 times, it'll get better and better and better. And whatever we practice is what we get good at. And I practiced and practiced, and I was able to make better and better pieces. And I grew the confidence to call different shops and say, "Hey, my name is Sylvia. I'm a local jewelry designer. I was wondering if I could sell some of my pieces in your shop." The first time I uttered those words, I almost puked because it felt so like, who said I was a jewelry designer? No one gave me a certificate. I just decided, and then I pursued it. And I didn't try to sell that first pair because they weren't good, but I practiced and I made them better. And then I did make something good. And so that was when I first felt like, okay, this is me doing something that feels like I'm really onto something. And learned a lot from that business. Obviously, I'm not still doing that now, but I don't know if that kind of answers your question as far as what did you study? And it was really more about knowing, okay, I want to pursue. I didn't know what I wanted to be, and so college was the perfect
way to explore that.
To explore and buy myself some time, truly.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, that's what college is for a lot of people, honestly. Now, what was your relationship and understanding with health during this period of your time, specifically like the gut health and how it impacts the rest of our body? Were you super familiar with that connection? What was your relationship at the time?
No relationship, no awareness at all. In fact, I had been chronically constipated and not even known that was actually a thing. I just thought that's what was normal, or this is just how it is. You've heard of the low carb diet, but during these days that we're speaking about in my younger 20s, I was on what we call like the all carb diet.
That sounds delicious.
Well, it really is binding for your digestive system. It doesn't really get you those fibers that you need to keep things moving. And so I would eat a lot of carbs, and I'd be like, well, I'll have a sandwich, which has like tomato and lettuce on it. And I'm not, to this day, and we'll talk about that evolution of my current philosophy on diet. I try to incorporate a lot, like way more colors and variety and good fats, but I still enjoy my food. I don't like to be really restrictive or limiting, because I believe one of the biggest dampers on our gut health is stress. And so to stress about what I eat, I've learned is very counterproductive. But of course, I did go through this phase of all the green drinks and all the, only eating these really healthy things when I started to it's like that waking up phase. But the phase we're talking about, when the babies were young and I was making jewelry and I was home with them and I was lonely, I definitely did not know anything about gut health or the importance of a regular, healthy bowel movement.
And then that all changed with the birth of your second baby.
Yeah.
And I want to dive into that a little bit. So walk me through the experience of what it was like after giving birth to your second baby. Was that a happy time of your life?
So real quick, I think it's important to give some context that after our first child, my son, that first 2 weeks, I just like cried all the time. And then everyone's like, that's normal, that's normal. And then sure enough, like the third week, I just was like, I feel better. I feel myself. And so then with Olive, our second child, that didn't happen at all. And so I was like, oh, this is good. I'm good to go. No crying, no. And then like, I realized that as the weeks continued, it wasn't good at all. Like there was just this kind of numbness. There was a heaviness. There was a very deep loneliness, as I was now feeling even more chained to my home because I had a 2.5-year-old and a baby, and I hadn't done any of the mindset work that evolved later on that I'd be happy to tell you about. It was still just making jewelry. And so it was a really, really difficult time of, like I said, I keep saying this word lonely because it really was just this deeply lonely time. And some of that was to blame for how I like the feelings in my body of just not feeling connected because we are social beings. But also some of it I learned was related to some nutrient deficiencies. Whenever you have babies kind of back to back, it really depletes your body. The gut health issue, which is that I had not been eating a rainbow, a variety of foods. And also during my delivery with Olive, my second child, I was given an antibiotic drip. And I was not made aware that I would need to replenish that good bacteria, which is something I'm really passionate about sharing with people now, is that if you wipe out all of the bacteria with an antibiotic, because it doesn't just kill the bad guys, it kills the good guys and the bad guys. It's what it has to do. And if it's absolutely medically necessary, then of course we want to use that. But then we want to immediately, or even during, if you're taking an oral antibiotic, with the approval of your doctor, you'll want to take a probiotic alongside of it. You'll just want to spread it out because an antibiotic, as I said, it kills all bacteria. So if you take the probiotic and antibiotic together, it's not that our probiotic or any probiotic will ruin the antibiotic, but the antibiotic will kill the good bacteria. So if you spread it out by a few hours, you're more likely to get those benefits of the probiotic. So I didn't know about any of that. And it was several years before I did start to learn about that. And it was several years of just kind of fighting this heaviness. And mine was more of an anxiety, just a constant state of alertness and worry, more than sadness, so to speak. It was an irritability. It was just feeling not myself. It was all of those things. And so it wasn't immediately that I was like, oh, maybe I should check my gut health.
Who thinks of that, right?
Right.
Seriously.
It was like, oh, here's a antidepressant. Oh, that doesn't really work. Oh, here's another one. Okay, maybe that's working. But actually, no, I don't think I still feel very well. And actually, I think it's causing me a lot of side effects. So it was one step after the other that almost things had to get worse before they got better. And then once they were at that, like almost rock bottom place, I realized something's got to give. And it was around that time that I had gone through a life coach training program because I was getting tired of the jewelry where I was telling you I'm lonely. And here I am just down here making jewelry. So it's like, hey, wake up, girl. You got to do something different. So I went through a life coach training program and started to learn about the power of our mind and how our thoughts create our feelings. But the really big kind of aha happened for me when I realized sometimes it's really easy to manage my mind and sometimes it's much more difficult. And what are the other factors at play? And that is really when I started to learn about the gut-brain connection.
So what did you see or research or read that along with that aha moment that you had, you realized, oh, wow, the gut really does have such a profound effect on the rest of our physical health and mental health?
Well, I wish it was like really clear in my mind, this exact thing that, oh, I'll Google that, but instead it was me starting to look into different supplements, natural alternatives, because I wasn't feeling super well on the antidepressant that I was put on. Just a lot of side effects. I was feeling numb creatively. Well, creativity is like my main Shazam. So take that away from me is like, wait, something's not working here. So the creativity sexually just felt like I was kind of, everything just felt numb. And so that was what I was like, well, maybe there's natural alternatives. And so when I started to research that, I definitely stumbled upon probiotics. And I think what I did is I went to the store and bought a couple different kinds and then just started trying different formulas. And then I read about prebiotics and I bought a specific standalone prebiotic. And I was taking these different things and starting to realize when I took certain ones, I felt kind of worse, like more activated, and some really helped me feel more calm. And it was that combination of calm that I pieced together and said, okay, if I take this, 3 of these and this, I feel pretty good. And that's going back to that highly sensitive child that has now evolved into a highly sensitive mother who really taxed her body. And I use that sensitivity to guide me to a combination of bacterial strains and species that I would basically type in and research, like, what can this strain do? What can this strain do? And then by putting it together, like I would combine how I felt and kind of compare notes with what they said the different types of bacteria could help with. And it was through that I was taking this little weird combination and starting to feel better. And so that was kind of where this idea of our current brand came from.
That's cool. It's so cool to see Lifted Naturals come to life. It's
Yeah.
so exciting. Before I get into Lifted Naturals, I cannot wait to talk about that. I want to talk some more about the gut brain connection because this was a big aha moment for me last year, too. I was listening to a podcast. Maria Menounos is Better Together. She's all into natural healing, holistic remedies. And she had this founder on her show, and he was the founder of Viome. And Viome is essentially like a testing kit that gets sent to your home, and you send it back, and it tests your microbiome. And then after it tests your microbiome, it gives you a report, and it shoots back essentially like a nutrition plan of, okay, these are the foods you should be eating, these are the foods you shouldn't be eating. Because like you, very sensitive child, I am not only sensitive to foods, but also the energy in my environment. Like I soak it all up like a sponge. Mm-hmm. And I also have struggled with constant chronic constipation, and it got to the point that I found myself having a colonoscopy at the age of 25.
Wow.
And I'm like, something is wrong here. And like my doctor, he did great by me, but he really wasn't teaching me, okay, maybe you should try to eat this food instead of this food. He didn't even ask me anything about what I was putting into my body. He was just trying to treat the symptoms, which I understand. Like, that's how he was trained, and he did that exceptionally well. But I kept saying, I want to do this holistically. There has to be something else. Yes, you gave me a great probiotic that I love, but there has to be something else. I'm not where I want to be. And so I heard about Viome, and I did it, and I started eating the foods that it was telling me to eat and avoiding the foods that were bad for my body. And my whole body changed. Like, I wasn't chronically constipated anymore. I just felt better, like in years, the first time in years. And I read a lot of testimonials on the website, and it said it also alleviated my anxiety. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, why does this testing kit that gives you a nutrition plan, how does that link to mental health and anxiety? Like, I just didn't get it. But now I do, because 70% of your immune system is in your gut. Like, really, I've done so much research since then, and so many diseases start in your gut. And if you focus on being proactive and giving yourself a healthy immune system and a healthy gut, that essentially domino effects into the rest of your health, physically and mentally. And that is why I'm so happy to have you on the show today, because you are an expert in my mind when it comes to everything related to what I just said. So I want to know, from your words and your experience, how is our gut health associated with our mental health? Because I think we're trained to think of those physical health and mental health as two separate entities, and it's really hard to see where that link comes from.
So it's not too hard once you understand there's bidirectional communication. Mm-hmm. So the gut talks to the brain, and the brain talks to the gut. So if you suddenly get nervous, and you get so nervous you make yourself almost sick, you can puke or have diarrhea. You can literally create a reaction in your stomach. And then also, it's important to note that those feel-good neurotransmitters that we all crave, like serotonin, most of those are made in the gut. And so if you think about trying to eat to feel better, you're wanting to put food into your body that it can create those neurotransmitters to help you feel better. And so for me, the idea of them being separate is the wildest concept. Like, we are so connected. Can you not see? Like, my head is not bouncing around outside of my whole body. It's a bidirectional communication. And some people get stuck in, well, which one started which? Like, did my IBS cause my anxiety, or did my anxiety cause my IBS? And really, it's not the most important question to ask. Instead, I challenge or invite people to inquire of, how can I heal this? And how can I be more gentle with myself in respect to my IBS and my anxiety? So for me, it really is about seeing the body as a whole, and understanding that the symptoms are simply signals. So I no longer look at anxiety and depression as an illness. They are very real. They are very real symptoms. They are screaming, shouting symptoms that something is not quite right, or there's not quite harmony or balance. And as I mentioned, I'm a really big advocate for understanding, healing, alleviating the stress that we carry, because I believe that the stress, there's a few things that can be really hard on your microbiome: antibiotics, stress, and sugar. Now, when I say sugar, I do want to kind of say, back to my high carb, all carb diet, it wasn't that I was constantly eating very sweet things, but carbohydrates turn into sugar in the body. And so if you're eating breads, bagels, bars, cereals, sandwiches, pizza, pasta, like all these very high carb without other colorful nutrients that help break those things down, you will create a lot of sugar in the body. Not to mention things like wheat are more porous. And so if they're sprayed with chemicals, they're more easily absorbed versus, say, an apple, how much it penetrates. The skin protects it, but very porous things like wheat really absorb the chemicals that are sprayed on it. So if I'm constantly eating things made out of wheat that have constantly been sprayed, then I am completely putting my microbiome at risk of being just completely out of whack. That's the scientific term, out of whack. Because it's really hurting that good bacteria. So your digestive system has good and bad bacteria. And we kind of want to overpopulate the good, and then the bad just kind of slowly dies off. Die off is a symptom that people experience, though, when they start taking a probiotic. They'll say, I don't think this is a good fit for me because I had these symptoms. It can be like being tired, fogginess, headache. And what's really, really tricky is that the symptoms of a histamine intolerance are often very, very similar as the symptoms of die-off. And so when I'm helping people to figure out which of our 4 mood probiotics is best for them, we have several that are histamine free. And so someone will take it and say, I had a histamine response, when really the histamine response reaction and the die-off reaction are very similar. So that's probably one of the biggest obstacles that I have to overcome. And so the fastest, easiest way to tell if your body can actually tolerate it and you just need to go give it more time is to go slower with the dosage. So you open the capsule and take just a teeny tiny bit and like literally just a sprinkle. So some people want a number. I'm like less than an eighth of a capsule. And I kind of want to get into this idea because people, well, how long do I stay at 1/8? And how I really want to get into that because I feel like it's the biggest indicator of the powerlessness that we experience or that we express. We are just wanting someone to tell us exactly what to do and how to heal our problems. And I truly believe the best way is to become your own advocate and start to trust your own knowing. It's good to take information and inspiration from other people, but nobody can know your body better than you. And so if you're waiting for someone else to help you feel better or to care more about how you feel than you do, you'll be waiting your whole life.
Wow. I'm right there with you, sister. What are some signs of an unhealthy gut? I know we talked about anxiety and depression, but if someone is wondering, okay, like, could my gut be the cause of all the stuff I'm experiencing? What are some of those symptoms that are really common with having an out of whack system gut,
Yeah.
as you say?
So the best indicator is your bowel movements each day. So we should be going 1 to 2 to 3 times a day.
Wow.
Babies go and they eat, or excuse me, they eat and they go.
Okay.
They eat and they go, right? The baby system is just, it's in and out. Each time they eat, they go. That's just, the natural, well, things start to get a little more sluggish as we become adults. And so if you can focus on regular healthy bowel movements, that'll be an indicator of, okay, am I moving in the right direction of health and healing, or do I still have some work to do? So the very first thing is that digestive process. For instance, when we're chronically constipated, that's a signal that something's not quite right. And when you hold all that in, it's holding all the toxins and everything else. It's really hard on our systems. And so how often you're going, I think, is a really great first start. Another thing is just your mental well-being. If you feel depressed or anxious, continually activated, those are just good signals that there's something out of harmony. Instead of making it mean that you're broken or there's some imbalance, I always say there is potentially an imbalance. Look to your gut. And so if you can start to heal that with gut healing foods, then you will be on the right track more towards balancing those chemicals more naturally.
I love that. I want to transition now into talking about your company, Lifted Naturals, which creates 4 mood boosting probiotics. And I'm pretty convinced now that, okay, like I want to take anything, I want to consume anything that will give me a healthy gut. After hearing everything that you said, it's so crucial to the rest of our mind, body, spirit. So briefly walk me through how you grew this idea of this really curiosity, right? Of, okay, what makes me feel good? Taking all these notes, doing all this research, and creating $1 million business out of it. Walk me through how that happened.
Okay, so it is about time I introduced that kind of my hidden, like, what is it? My back pocket, like what I've got going on. So I'm very creative. I'm a visionary. I'm an enthusiast. I'm a starter. But my husband is an implementer, a detail guy, a finisher, the small pieces, things that they don't come naturally to me. So in my previous businesses, I was doing jewelry. Then I evolved into life coaching. I started to learn about how our thoughts create our feelings. I was growing these different businesses, kind of continually evolving into what is the next thing. This doesn't quite feel right. But when I got the idea for Lifted, when I got the idea for that original probiotic that was a probiotic plus a prebiotic all in one, basically combining what I had found, putting it into one cohesive product, I did go to my husband and I said, I think this could be huge, but it could also be a huge investment. I need your buy-in. I need you to be up for this. I don't even know if I might be able to do it without you, but I don't want to. And previous to this business, everything I had done was solopreneur on my own, no business partners, no interest in any business partners. I liked doing things on my own, but I had this vision and I could see that it could really help a lot of people. And I was willing to get out of my own way to say, and I'm going to do it all by myself, because I knew that I wanted to go far. And if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. Mm-hmm. And so I approached him with it and he was like, okay, I can see that. He was not totally bought into the concept. He was like, okay, I can tell like she's really into this. This is really important to her. Whereas the beautiful thing that's happened over the course of 3 years now is that he is completely bought in because he's experienced the benefits of the products. He's seen the customer reviews and testimonials and the people that are just oohing and ahhing over the improvements they've seen. When you experience that shift, you start to realize, oh my gosh, we are doing something. Oh, this is huge. We're doing this. And in fact, just a few months ago in December of 2019, he quit his job as an engineer and was able to come on board with the company full time.
That's so exciting. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So he is a big piece of the puzzle as far as the success we've created. Additionally, when I got the very first idea for the product, I started calling around different manufacturers to see who was willing to make a custom formula probiotic, who had a team of scientists and lab people and chemists. And I knew that there were some other pieces to the puzzle. Like, I wasn't trying to say, like, I'm going to do this all alone. And I'm always super clear, like, we are not mixing this good bacteria in our bathtub. Like, we have a good manufacturing practices facility that's FDA approved facility. Our manufacturer, that partnership has been huge for the success of Lifted. So I was able to find a company that I was like, this is it. Oh my gosh, I can just tell they're going to work with me. A lot of companies they're like, yeah, you can put your name on this white label probiotic we have. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. No, like I've tried like 30 different probiotics. I'm not just going to put my name on yours. Like, I have figured this out. This is what we're doing here. And you're either going to help me with this or sayonara. So I was able to find a really great manufacturer. I got my husband on board with it. And it was at this point that, like, even things that are really difficult for me, like, I could just have him do it, like, and then I could lean into my zone of genius and I could continue to do the things that light me up and that really gain traction for the business. I love to communicate. I love to inspire and educate and connect with people. And I could lean into that zone of genius. I'm reading The Big Leap right now by, is it Gay Hendricks? He talks a lot about the various zones. Okay. Zone of competence, zone of excellence, and then zone of genius.
I love that.
Yeah. So you want to make the big leap and live your life in your zone of genius as much as possible. And with Lifted, I'm really able to do that. And so, yeah, the product idea was right in front of me. It was difficult to take. I had to pour a sachet of this one thing, combine these two things, and then take 3 of this other thing. And so I was like, needs to be one pill. Mm-hmm. And so that was Mood Boosting Probiotic, our very first and our top seller still to this day, of 9 different bacterial strains and species, plus the prebiotic GOS, which that was the prebiotic I had identified that could really help with the body's stress response and just to create a feeling of calm. And so it's this all-in-one probiotic plus prebiotic, specific types of bacteria that help with the body's stress response, help with anxiety, mood, depression, all of these mood related gut brain connection type things, plus that prebiotic all in one capsule. And so that was our first product, mood boosting probiotic.
I love it. I mean, not only do I want to buy it just because of what's in the product, but also the name, mood boosting. Like, who doesn't want a mood boost? It's truly genius, like you said.
Thank you. Thank you. And what's funny too is that we from there were like, okay, it's going to be this mood boosting line. And so from there, I came out with this product. I had a lot of really great support. I had been kind of building the hype around it, that we were creating this line. And it quickly came to my attention that a lot of people, or several, I wouldn't say a lot, several people were like, I want to take it, but I have a histamine sensitivity. Have you ever thought about coming out with a more histamine friendly formula? And so from there, I started to kind of do a whole nother round of research. Like, it was like, okay, well, what could I do here? And each time I would have this wave of idea, it was just idea, follow the breadcrumb trails, and then research. And that led to Bifidus mood boost, which is a bifidobacterium only. So it turns out that lactobacillus is a good type of bacteria that can cause some histamine response in histamine sensitive individuals. And so I came out with this other formula that I still kept that prebiotic GOS, because prebiotics are really useful for restoring your microbiome. They feed the good bacteria themselves. So probiotics are good bacteria that you put into your gut, and prebiotics are what feed the good bacteria. So not only are you feeding the probiotics that you're putting in there from the capsule, but also you're feeding your good bacteria, and you want to feed the good guys and starve the bad guys. And sugar feeds the bad guys. And so that's why if you have a very high sugar or high carbohydrate diet, you'll find yourself feeding the bad guys. So we want to feed the good guys, starve the bad guys, and start to feel better. And so that's where Bifidus Mood Boost came, and it's 4 different types of bifidobacteria plus that prebiotic GOS. So that's going good. We got these 2 probiotics, we're rolling, and then it's like, got people reaching out. I love this, but I can't do the prebiotics. And so I was like, oh, can't do the prebiotics, right? Can't do it. So I'm researching. I'm like, why can't people do prebiotics, right? So I'm just following one breadcrumb after another. Well, they can't do prebiotics because if they have some sort of yeast overgrowth, candida, or anything like that, then they're going to potentially struggle with a prebiotic. So that was from there. It's like, okay, we need to come out with a probiotic only, no prebiotics. Yes, prebiotics are good. Yes, they are the key to health. But if you put that in there and you're not ready for it, then you're going to run screaming. So we needed a probiotic only. So from there, we made Mood Super Strains, which is a probiotic only, and it still is histamine free. But what's a little tricky about this one is it does have one lactobacillus type of bacteria in it. So I found out there's one very helpful type of lactobacillus bacteria that's still histamine free, has a lot of benefits, and it's Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG. It's the type of bacteria. So we included that. So, each time along the way, I'm learning like, okay, you can include this, you can't include this. If you're going to be in our lab team and our chemists I'm continually saying like, is this, can this, when people reach out and say, is this histamine free? We want to be able to guide them and help them as much as possible. So that's the third one, Mood Super Strains, which is probiotic only. And then fourth and finally, I came out with SBO Mood Boost, which is a spore-based probiotic. And the first 3 all have lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, various strains and species of those 2 very traditional types of bacteria that have been around for eons. Well, spore-based have also been around for a long time. And we used to actually consume them more when we would grow our own food and it wasn't like sterilized before we ate it. So it's that good bacteria. When you kind of think about the feel good from gardening, there's feel good dirt that essentially you're breathing in. And that's why one of the reasons why gardening is so good for us. And also the spore-based bacteria is really resistant to stomach acid. So it really gets in there. So if someone has a really serious case of SIBO or leaky gut, and they've tried other probiotics, and not only did they not help, but maybe they made it worse, I've found they typically need a spore-based organism, an SBO probiotic. So fourth and finally in the mood lineup is the SBO Mood Boost. It's the green one. And it is, in fact, the one I found that my son, who had several ear infections as a baby, and I didn't exactly know how to handle that. And he was given antibiotics. So he had more antibiotics than, say, my daughter. So he didn't do as well on our first probiotics I was making. So it continually pushed me to say, well, what now? What could I try now? And that's what led us to the SBOs.
That's awesome. It's a great variety. I mean, you're really hitting everybody. Like you're giving everybody a chance to be naturally feel better, which is the whole mission and backbone of Lifted Naturals.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about, in all of your products on your website, you say there are feel good strains, like feel good bacteria strains in our products. How do these, for someone who went to school for fashion merchandising and marketing, I know nothing there is to know about bacteria strains or anything that is really inside of a probiotic pill.
Mhm.
How do these bacterial strains talk to our mood and talk to our health? Like, what makes them, as you like to say on your website, feel good strains?
Right. So it's kind of about if you go into a microbiome that's out of whack or out of balance, those people that have mood issues, they found are lacking in certain types of good bacteria. Whereas people who, or even a lot of times they do these trials on mice, they will give them the feel good bacteria and then they will give them a stressful situation like water that they have to swim in. And the mice that had the feel good bacteria are chilling and swimming. And the ones that, and I don't like this really, I'm not these studies on these mice, just
Yeah.
I'm the researcher who's like putting all the pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
The mice who are not given the feel good bacteria just stress out and don't make it. And so it's really about how your body handles stress. And so if you're continually under stress, that's hard on your microbiome. And then it perpetuates this cycle of not feeling well and not be able to handle stress. Then you're more stressed. And so it really is this stressful life that we live. And if we're not able to restore those levels back into balance. And so I like to be clear that just because we continually talk about how they help with mood, it does not mean that they don't also help with digestion and immune health and inflammation and all those other things that most probiotic companies are targeting and talking about. They help with those too, just as much. It's just that they've also been found to help with mood. So that's why one of my favorite taglines for our company is beneficial side effects, because that was the very thing that got me started. And I just got my truth tingles on my legs, which is anytime I'm talking about something that really just is like right on point, I get these truth tingles.
That's awesome. I love that.
So the not so friendly side effects that I was experiencing before were just so hard for me as a sensitive person. And some people can take different pharmaceuticals and not experience those side effects quite as strongly as sensitive people like you or I do. Well, I'm not going to speak for you, but for me, it really was hard. And so I found that I wanted to experience beneficial side effects. And there's things that people have told us, your probiotic help with this, it helped with this, and things that I'm like, oh, it helps with that too. It helps with that and it helps with that. And it's this really cool experience of continually finding new beneficial side effects that and the reason is because our body wants harmony. And so if you're finding this balance and it's creating balance, of course, you're going to experience more and more beneficial side effects.
I love that. Something that you say on your website is it's not all in your head, but it can be in your gut. And that is so cool because something when we had our brief 15-minute call before this episode, you had said, I really want to talk about reshaping how we view mental health. And I latched onto that and I was like, yes, great idea, Sylvia. We need to talk about it because I think that a portion of our mental health, I know that our mental health is based off of out of whack microbiome or nutrient deficiencies. And like my mom, for example, she went through a period where she was having severe anxiety and she found out, oh my gosh, I have like 0 magnesium in my system. And she started taking some magnesium supplements and it was instantly better. And that really showed me a couple of years ago, oh my gosh, there's so much more to mental health that we have control over. I think it's so easy to think of someone who has anxiety or depression and think they're just not working hard enough to make it go away, like it's all on them, they're crazy, whatever. And that's not the case at all. And I love that we're having this conversation because for me, talking about, okay, all these ways that our physical health can impact our mental health, that is a great way to eliminate judgment and to also really show that our bodies are truly intertwined ecosystems that work together, like you said. So I'm curious, Sylvia, how has this whole journey changed your view on mental health?
Oh my gosh, I'm chomping at the bit. Can you tell? Like,
Yeah.
I was like, let me add it. Let me add it.
Go for it.
So I believe that our mental health is on this spectrum, that we're all on this spectrum floating kind of up and down at various points in our life. So to be like they have mental illness, it would be like saying like they have like a bone that's out or something like that. Well, then you put the bone back in, you heal put a cast on it. I don't know, whatever you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then you float back into physical health, you know? And so mental health is the same way. We float on this spectrum, and there are various things that can really upset or trigger our mental health. And so, like I said before, I truly believe that the mental health issues that most people deal with are very real symptoms, not very real diseases. I think the underlying disease is something with gut health or something with trauma. And so I think that those two actually go very deeply together, because if you've experienced some sort of trauma, then your body is not in the rest and digest phase. It's in the fight or flight. It's not going to be able to glean all the nutrients from the food that you're eating. It's going to quickly move on to get out of danger. And so I truly do believe that when we shift the way we look at our mental health, we can change everything about it. And instead of seeing it as this illness, it's instead just a symptom. And the symptom is leading us back to further healing that we need to do. So if it is our gut health, then we'll approach that. If it is some sort of trauma, then we approach that. And by doing that, those two then work together, because it's kind of like that bi-directional communication I was talking about. The trauma in the brain impacts the gut. So if you're experiencing anxiety and depression, there's things you can do to heal your gut physically. And then there's things you can do to heal the experience, heal the psyche that maybe has this lodged energy from something you've experienced. But I'm not saying they're not super duper connected. I do believe they are very connected. And one more thing I'm really passionate about is this idea of people are getting more and more vocal about, release the stigma, or what's the hashtag that?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Stop the stigma.
Yeah.
Some sort of hashtag.
Yeah.
And what that usually leads to is an acceptance of like, yes, please take your pills because it's okay to take pills. And I'm not here to say that I don't believe that, but I just think it's kind of missing the mark of what it truly means to have an issue with your mental health. Mm-hmm. Because I truly believe that if we were to shine a light of awareness on it, for instance, I don't believe that I am genetically more disposed to anxiety necessarily. I believe in epigenetics. So that means if I were to put myself into an environment that's very stressful, I would experience a lot of anxiety. But if I put myself in an environment of healing and health and well-being and nourishment and support and guidance and love, then I think that I would really excel, and I do excel in those areas. And so it's about understanding when someone says this runs in my family, I'll say, yes, it does, but not the way you think. It runs in your family because it's a learned experience that's now programmed into your cells, and it's your job to clear that energy. Once again, it's going back to being your own advocate, because when you take responsibility for how you feel, then you can heal it. But if you're continually pushing it off and saying that this or this caused it, then you are at the mercy of those experiences. Mm-hmm. And so I really do feel like I stand here as this brand owner, my biggest mission to say, become your own advocate for health and healing. Take the driver's seat and understand that you have the capacity to heal. Even if something happened outside of you, you are in the driver's seat to heal and feel better.
I love that. I am right there with you. I believe everything you say, and I stand behind all that. Sylvia, this has been amazing. And for everyone listening that wants to connect with you or buy a probiotic, where can they find you?
So you can go directly to our website, liftednaturals.com. We also sell directly on Amazon. And so as long as you go to Amazon and see that sold by Lifted Naturals, you are getting our product. So there's a little bit of confusion as far as if that's, and some people say, well, I want to support the company. We respect that. But if you got that prime shipping and you want it quick, typically Amazon is the fastest place to go. So, and we also hang out on Instagram quite a bit. So if people want to come over there and find us, we're always sharing insight, information, and a little bit of silliness.
Awesome. I love that. And my last question is a question that I ask all of my guests at the end of the show is, how do you cultivate curiosity in your life every day?
So for me, curiosity requires a sense of trust. You cannot explore with curiosity anything that you don't trust yourself to embrace. And so the core feature of curiosity for me is trusting myself, trusting my hunches, trusting my intuition, and then trusting those nudges to take action and to pursue the research, the product, the relationship. Curiosity comes from trusting yourself. And once again, trusting yourself leans back to that whole idea of being your own advocate. So If you don't believe in you, then no one else will or can, at least not as much as they should. And so it's all about stepping into your own power.
Sylvia, thank you so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.